Okay, great. And I am a managing partner at a seed stage venture firm called NFX, and we are based here in San Francisco. We've got an office in Palo Alto and also in Tel Aviv. And I have been doing startups since the 90s and have invested in over 50 marketplaces. And over the years, seeing what makes for a great marketplace led us to create the Marketplace's Scorecard to give us a checklist and to give you guys a checklist just to go down. And we actually use this weekly in the office as we're talking to new startups, as we're thinking through investments we're making. And so we just published it recently, and I wanted to walk through and answer any questions about it that helps us frame what the positives and downsides of some of these marketplaces are. No marketplace is perfect. They all have challenges. So what you want to do is identify what elements are good or easy or in your favor and what elements are not. And that's what the scorecard is here for. It helps you think stuff through. That's all it is. Okay? By the way, we put this up and we had a few hundred people score their marketplaces, and everybody scored almost 100%. So self-reported data on this tends to not be pretty accurate. All right, so we're investing $1 to $3 million. We've done 50 marketplaces. You've heard of some of the marketplaces we've invested in. And let's go through the 28 elements of the scorecard. You can see a lot of this on NFX Essays, where we've got a bunch of articles about marketplaces and whatnot. Okay, number 1 and 2 of the 28. The first thing we look at is, are you providing an economic advantage? Okay, is there money reasons for the supply to be using your system? For instance, Square, suddenly I can take money from a credit card if I'm a flea market vendor. This is an economic advantage to me. I just make more money during the day. Right? If I'm on Craigslist, I can now sell that damn couch instead of throwing it out and letting someone take it off the sidewalk. Right? That's an economic advantage for me on the supply side. Can you give an economic advantage to the demand side? You know, you look at Airbnb. Well, I guess I could leave my house for the night, go sleep with my girlfriend, and go make $400. That's an economic advantage for me. Poshmark. Oh, I've got this closet full of crap. I can sell it on Poshmark and make some money and buy some more clothes. All right? These are economic advantages that each of these marketplaces advantage to either side of the market. Our point is, if you can't create economic advantage, if you're just creating an experience that's much better, but there's no economic advantage, our argument is that it will be unsustainable. So if you can't find the economic advantage for one or both sides, find a different business, reconfigure the business until it works. All right? Scorecard number 3 and 4. How high frequency is the transaction? So Farfetch, on the supply side, if you are one of the 700 boutiques that's on there, this is pretty frequent that you're selling something through Farfetch. The Farfetch marketplace really enables your boutique to increase your revenue 30, 50, 100, 400% than just having a store, okay? Because there's such high frequency. And then on the supply side, if you're a driver, you can drive for 10 hours and be making money the whole time. So the frequency of you using the marketplace could be every day. Could be every hour of every day. That's very high frequency on the supply side. Same thing could be true on the demand side. One of the reasons that everybody likes food delivery is because of the high frequency, right? The average order value is actually quite low, and the margins tend to be quite low, but the frequency is so high with eating that everybody, Uber and DoorDash, and everybody has tried to start with food delivery. That's the only reason why. And then same thing with Poshmark. People are buying clothes 2-3 times a week. Many of the people are on their app 7-8 times a day. Okay, so the frequency there is high. Notice if your marketplace has high frequency or low frequency. Item number 5 in the scorecard. What is the ASP? Okay, so if you've got a Poshmark, it's got a pretty low ASP. Okay, it's not great to have a low ASP. It's better to have a high ASP. You just make more money. However, Poshmark's probably going to go public for many $billion pretty soon here, even with a low. You just need to understand how you have to make your marketplace function when you have a low ASP. Airbnb obviously doing better with $500. Outdoorsy, the RV company, because they're renting out for 3 or 4 days in a row, they've got $1,400 as their ASP. And then you've got Worthy, you know, a company selling diamond rings and whatnot, about $10,000. And of course, Ribbon is doing home transactions, $400,000 ASP. All right, because they're doing residential real estate. Those are big ASPs. So where are you in that spectrum? Okay, the higher the better, typically. Number 6 through 7 on the scorecard. Do you have high fragmentation? Right? This is good. This is less good. Hard for you. And if you come to us with something like that, we're going to say, yeesh. That's hard. You know, here's Amazon, here's Macy's. Good luck to you, right? They're gonna whip you around. Okay, so you want fragmentation so that you can add value to the market. Otherwise, the suppliers or the demand are going to whip you around. Okay. Items 8 through 9 of the scorecard. Do you have a high number of users? This is different from fragmentation. This looks similar in terms of the graphics, but it's different, right? There's a lot of people who can use a lift because they can get in a car, they can sit there, they can look cool, they look out the window. It rains, they don't care. It blows, they don't care. It's cold, they don't care, right? Then you go over to Bird. Okay, well, I'm on a hill. I can't really use this little scooter to go up this hill. I can't use it in Chicago in the winter, right? I have a bad hip, so I can't use it. So the number of people who can use a Bird is lower than the number of people who can use a lift. Be aware of how many people on either side can actually do your thing that you're proposing. Item number 10 on the scorecard. Do you control the payment flow? This is pretty simple. Make sure the money flows through you. We've had some people come to us and they said, oh, we're going to get to that later. I'm like, no, you need to get to that now. If you don't control the money flow, you're going to get disintermediated. You're going to get pushed around. Number 11 on the scorecard. Have you solved the chicken or egg problem? Or can you solve the chicken or egg problem? Is it pretty clear you can? Right, there's always a challenge for these marketplaces. We've got an article on NFX essays that talks about the 17 or 19 ways of solving the chicken or egg problem that we've accumulated over the years. So you can read through that checklist to see if you can nail one or more of those. But, you either solved this or you didn't. And so that's an item on the checklist we look for. Items 12 through 13, let's get through that. There's a mistake. 14, avoid disintermediation. Okay, so we have these situations where, you connect a home cleaner to a homeowner, and job one is fine. But job two, now they're friends. They don't need you anymore. You've been disintermediated. Don't be in that situation. Or if you're giving lessons for guitar, this is a problem because the guitar teacher gets to know you, and you can just disintermediate the marketplace. So figure out how much you're being disintermediated and how to avoid that. Okay, you've got to stop them from doing that. HomeJoy was the problem I was mentioning. Hired had an interesting situation where the person would get hired, the engineer would get hired by the company, and Hired had no way of knowing. So Hired started proposing that they would give a $150 bottle of champagne to the person when they got hired. So they're like, oh yeah, I just got hired. And they're like, oh, thanks very much. Here's $150. Hey, corporation, give me $15,000. All right. So that was a clever way to start blocking some of the disintermediation. And they have many programs to do that because Hired isn't a marketplace that's easy to keep from being disintermediated. Same thing with tutor.com. All of these face difficulties there. Okay. Item 15 through 16 on the scorecard. Do you find asymmetries in your market? All right. Which side is easier to get? In my first 20 minutes talking with a marketplace company that comes in to talk to us, I'm trying to figure out, is this a supply side marketplace or a demand side? And what I mean is the demand side harder or the supply side harder? If it's demand side, it's a demand side marketplace. Okay? Is one easier than the other? Typically it is. It's hard to find one where they're both the same level of difficulty. Okay? But if you look at something like an Upwork or a Lending Club, it turns out it's a demand side. There's plenty of people who want to loan people money. There's lots of organizations that are proposing to loan people money on Lending Club, but they just can't find enough people to take those loans. Okay, they have a demand side marketplace. You'd think that wasn't the case, but it turns out that's true. And then you have... That's right. So if the demand side is harder, I call it a demand side marketplace because let's forget about the supply for now. Let's just solve for demand. Okay, and so yeah, that's it. And so you've got a company like Uber or OpenTable or Outdoorsy. The issue with Outdoorsy, this RV company, there's 16 million RVs in the U.S. You think, oh, there's plenty of supply. But it turns out there's only 50,000 for rent, and there's 35 million people trying to rent an RV. All right, so it's massive over-demand for the lack of supply. So this was a supply-side marketplace. And so when we met them, they didn't know that, and we showed them that, and then we showed them how to go get that, and now they just raised at $350 million. So they're doing well with that because they figured out this huge asymmetry, and that was very helpful to them. The asymmetry was really helpful. So find your asymmetries. Another thing we also talk about is, can you find the white-hot center of each side? The asymmetry is not only from one side to another like this, but there's an asymmetry inside of the side. Right? There's a group in there that is much more the white hot center. And if you can get them going, the rest of the side will come on board typically. Okay, so look for your asymmetries. Asymmetries can be helpful. All right? Number 17 through 18, avoid or block multi-tenanting. All right? I tried to find up a simpler term for this because multi-tenanting sounds too complicated, but this is important. You can still build a big business with really easy multi-tenanting because you see this on the supply side, right? And you even see it on the demand side. It's really easy for both sides of this marketplace to have multi-tenanting. Maybe that's why both companies are losing about $1 billion a year. Maybe that's why Uber is adding the airline miles loyalty programs, which is a desperate attempt to get profitable, which is what the airlines used in a desperate attempt to get profitable. But we'll see. Okay? We'll see over time what happens. But multi-tenanting is hard. Try to avoid it if you can. Figure out how to stop it. Those guys can't. 19 through 20. Do you solve the complete need of one side? The complete need. So there's a bunch of ways of doing this. So Poshmark started out with women's used clothing. And to make that work, they had to add the shipping. Now they've been adding men's, they've been adding children's. They've been adding other features and services to their platform so that a buyer of fashion always thinks to go to Poshmark, solving their complete needs. A company like Honeybook creates SaaS tools so that their creatives, the millions of creatives who use Honeybook, are doing their proposals, their calendar, their contracts, their payments, their inventory. If you're missing some of these, then they might have to use other tools. They might not be on you for 6 or 8 hours a day. But Honeybook has gotten to the point, Ivy got to the point where their users are on there 6 or 8 hours a day, solving the complete need of one side of the marketplace. Adding a profile could be completing their full needs. House has a beautiful profile for all the professionals on there. It's really their best profile online. And so people are very loyal to House, and they make a lot of money with those people advertising to increase their rankings, like in Google. All right? And then giving them high liquidity. If you give someone too much liquidity, then they never need to go anywhere else. You can essentially get their loyalty and give all of their needs by giving them so much business they don't need to go anywhere else. All right? These are multiple ways of solving one side's complete needs. We too often see companies that only solve a piece of someone's needs, and therefore they can't capture the rent. They can't really capture the marketplace. All right, number 21. What's your size of your market? Everyone says, all the VCs say, I want to invest in giant TAM. Got to have a total addressable market that's huge. Then I'm interested. And that's generally true. That's why most of the VCs say it. However, we got a star on it. And the star is because what we've seen is that smallish markets can really bleed quickly if you find the white hot center. You start with books, and then you're Amazon. And then the networking side, you start with college photo sharing, and now you're Facebook. Like, you can start with small things, and they quickly bleed. Okay, so yes, we need a big TAM, but if you've got a story about where you start small and then grow big, that also makes sense. So don't always believe that it's got to be a giant TAM story. All right, number 22 out of 28. Do you have any market expanding properties? Can you think about how your software in your marketplace will actually take the marketplace and make it much larger than it is? We all know the story about Lyft and Uber. I always put Lyft up first, not only because I was an early investor, but because they actually beat Uber to the market by 30 days. Uber copied them within 30 days. Uber's genius was their aggressiveness, not their creativity. And then Airbnb have massively expanded the market. Okay. Number 23 and 24. This is what it is. Most of the time, companies can't figure out how to have high volume acquisition channels for one side. And if you can't figure that out, you're not going to go anywhere. If you have figured out an affordable high volume acquisition channel, you might go build a business around it. You might actually start with this and then build the business around it. If you don't have this, you're in trouble. Okay, so we're always looking for this. And in the last 8 years, of course, it's been Facebook, right? Facebook has transformed our ability to buy geographically in $50 increments. It's been amazing. It's been an amazing transformation. A lot of big businesses have been built just on Facebook. That's going to end at some point when it gets arbed out. But right now it's still working. Because the free growth channels have disappeared. You've got to figure out generally how to buy stuff these days. Although there are going to be some more viral applications. There are going to be some ways you're going to find that word of mouth will kick off because of something unique or special or interesting you're doing. But in general, what we've seen over the years is getting harder and harder to buy. And the paid channels are getting better and better, particularly Facebook. Okay, and don't forget about TV. If you're the first one to TV, you win. People are still on TV. 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day. Flat, steady. Okay. 25 of 28 on the scorecard. Do you have an appropriate take rate? Some people say, oh, well, if you don't have at least 10%, then there's no real marketplace there. That's just not true. We've seen good marketplaces down at 1.4%, basically transaction volumes, right? If you're doing multi-billion dollars a year, you can have a pretty big business at 1.4%. 10% is good, 20% is good, 30, 40. These tend to be really hard to sustain unless you're doing managed marketplaces, but can be done. Okay, so find an appropriate take rate. Sometimes your marketplace, you can't find an appropriate take rate. It doesn't work. Just the whole thing breaks. So you need to find an appropriate one. But different levels can be appropriate for your market. Number 26 of 28. Homogeneity. Right? Look at each side. Do they all have the same needs? Right? On Lyft, I have the same need. I want to get in a car and I want to get out of a car at a different point. Pretty homogeneous. Drivers, pretty homogeneous. The homogeneity on the Lyft and Uber system is clearly extreme. Okay, but then you have other marketplaces like architectural services where it's very heterogeneous what people want. Okay, very important to understand how heterogeneous or homogeneous each side is. Number 27, can you avoid the pollution? Okay, once you get going, you're going to face a lot of pollution if it's working well. And are there effective mechanisms for reducing that pollution? Sometimes what happens is these marketplaces get into the second or third round of their growth and they hit a wall because they can't figure out how to get all of the desperate people inside out of there. A sad example was Daily Strength about 10 years ago, which was a marketplace for information about healthcare. And what happened was the depression people started bleeding into all the other spaces, right? So they were supposed to be in the depression area, but they kept bleeding everywhere, just trying to get attention, trying to have someone talk to them because they were desperate. And it just drove all the people away from the marketplace, and the marketplace shut down because they couldn't, this was sort of a real challenge. And the last one that we look for now is, can you add financial products to your marketplace? All right, whether you're adding extra loans, supply chain financing, can you add credit cards? Can you add insurance? Can you add vendor financing? What are the financial products that you can add to your marketplace that are going to increase your take rate, to increase your liquidity, increase the value of the business? These can either transform your marketplace or they at least make it more profitable. And if other marketplaces can't copy you on this because of the complexity of it or because you get there first, you can just run away with the market. This is a really great lever, and we're always looking for this when we're looking at marketplaces. And that is the end of the Marketplaces Scorecard. Are there questions? Yes, sir.
We get into a lot of the financial stuff, but can you talk a little bit about subsidizing the beginning of a marketplace because there's a natural network effect, flywheel, supply demand dynamic that businesses don't have it?
Yeah, so the question is about subsidizing the marketplaces at the beginning to try to get the flywheel going. And, this is one of the chicken or egg. This is one of the ways of solving chicken or egg. It's on the list of 19 ways of doing stuff. It can be a really good idea as long as your ASP is high enough and your frequency is high enough. The problem that many of these marketplaces are encountering is that they're able to raise the venture capital on the TAM size, and then they just start spending without regard to the unit economics, and they get in trouble. But in general, subsidizing one side or the other really helps with micro adjustments on the marketplace, right? To tune liquidity for this month or this week while you're growing, because it's never easy on both sides, and so you're going to want to use incentives to try to balance that liquidity on either side throughout the process. And one thing I will say to you guys is, one of the metaphors that's been really useful for me in the companies I've worked with is these marketplaces are hard to fly. So imagine you're a fighter pilot, right? And you're flying an old, plane from the 20s. It's just, you're flying a 747. But these things are like flying one of those F-117s or whatever that are radar, that can't be detected by radar. They only work when you're really adjusting the controls all the time really quickly. And that has to do, you have to do it on a weekly basis. I mean, I watched Parchmark from the first days. The complexity of running that kind of a business is extraordinary in terms of your data acquisition and then your decision making, constantly changing how much you're incentivizing one side or another, how much you're revealing, the phases you go through, what the interfaces are. You've got to constantly change these marketplaces over time because they're like humans. They are different things at different stages of their life cycle. And I think you need to understand the complexity of that. And incentivization is just one lever you have to make these things fly right? These things are hard to fly. Yes, sir. Yeah, are there signals on B2B versus B2C? This list that we pulled together is so far, I mean, it'll probably be 35 2 years from now instead of 28. We keep adding to it, but this is comprehensive for both. The thing with B2B that, name the number of big B2B marketplaces. Doesn't take very long. There's not a lot of big ones. And the reason is that the people on both sides of a B2B marketplace understand their economic incentives too well. And so they're always trying to get around you. And they're hard to corral because they're very suspicious. They can see into the future. Consumers don't care. Consumers are doing all this for convenience and price. Businesses do it for convenience, price, but they have longevity, they have status, they have a whole lot of other reasons that they get involved. And those can prevent them from supporting your marketplace. And so we've seen very few really big B2B businesses. That's what I would say about that. Is just be aware that corralling people on the B2B side is harder, and they will defect and disintermediate much faster than on the consumer side.
Do you have any comments on the three-sided marketplaces or any experience with them?
Yeah, so the question is about three-sided marketplaces. In general, avoid them. And the reason is it's hard enough to build two different businesses. The reason marketplaces are hard is that they evolve and you have to fly them well, but it's also that you've got to build two businesses at once for the supply and for the demand. When you have three-sided, you then have to do the complexity goes up dramatically. So we've seen a few like FitMob where they thought it was a marketplace between exercisers, consumers who wanted to exercise, and then trainers. But it turns out it's a three-sided marketplace between trainers, exercisers, and the locations where they're going to be exercising. You actually needed a room, particularly in the places where it snows and it's cold outside, which is most places, and in the U.S. And so once they discovered it was a three-sided marketplace, they had to pivot the whole company. So it can be done, and once you get it, it's super defensible, but it's hard. One of the things that we look at is, and we'll talk about this later today, is n-sided marketplaces, where you actually look at adding nodes to your network when you don't need to have them. So, for instance, you could create a two-sided marketplace and then keep adding new nodes to them. The three-sided marketplace is such that you need three sides to make it work. In that case, it's really hard. If you can create an n-sided marketplace where two is enough and the business is going, then you can add 3, 4, 5, 6 different types of nodes onto your marketplace. That becomes interesting. That becomes more of a market network. And we think that's very promising, but that's different because you only need two. Two's hard enough, typically. Any other? Yeah.
I was curious how you score it.
Yeah, we just right now we're just scoring 1 to 5 on each one. It's pretty simple. And we just go down to 28 and then we can score them up. And look, ultimately, it's not like we get to a number and then decide to invest or not. It's really just a thinking mechanism, which is what I said at the beginning. Like it's just a checklist for you guys to go through and make sure you're being thorough and finding things to exploit, like the asymmetries and stuff like that.
Do you treat like a marketplace company different than just like a network effects company, or something like that?
Do you treat a marketplace differently than a social network or, we do. So we've identified 13 different network effects. And if you look at the network effects map on the website, you can see different colors. So there are direct network effects, which are in blue. And then there are these two-sided marketplace network effects or platform network effects, which are really different. And they've got really different playbooks. So yeah, we do treat them differently. But yeah, they're startups and they're business and we're all just people. So there's a lot of similarities too. But yeah, there's definitely different playbooks for each type of network effect. And then, yeah, it gets complicated. Time's up. So thank you so much.